loneliness and isolation, with that, which leads to no sense of belonging, is truly detrimental for quality of life. When you look at our hierarchy of needs as humans, like, we cannot exist without a sense of belonging and connectivity.
Isolation from normality is something right now that we are all experiencing. It is also a common daily occurrence for families and kiddos on rare medical journeys. A lot of these families also feel a lack of belonging or a sense of belonging. Luckily, occasionally we stumble upon other inspiring organizations that take that to heart and do their best to create a community where these families, those kids, are given a sense of belonging in incredible ways. When meeting Maddy, our featured child for the month of March, we became aware of such an organization. One that is doing amazing things for amazing kids like Maddy. I'm Seth Carnell, and this is the Go Shout Love podcast. Our conversation today is with two incredible members of Team Impact, Allie and Shanna. And basically what they do is they match kids with serious and chronic illnesses with college athletic teams. Essentially, these kids become a member of the team. They attend practices, games, team dinners, more. They essentially are drafted by the team. They sign a contract, and then they get to serve not only as teammates, but then these kids become an inspiration for those athletes. This is inclusive. This is therapeutic. This is social and emotional development, and simply put, this is amazing. If you have a place in your heart for stories like this, you will sincerely enjoy this episode. Leading this conversation is Josh Veach, one of the co-directors of Go Shout Love. Please rate and review this podcast. It is one easy way to help us shout love as loud as we can. And here is Josh to get us started.
You guys are with an organization called Team Impact. You came on our radar because we are having this conversation in March, and so our current featured kiddo is Maddy, and she is a Team Impact kiddo. And so before we get into really what that means, just give us an overall view of what Team Impact is and the work that you're doing with families.
Sure. So Team Impact is an organization that matches children that are facing serious and chronic illnesses with college athletic teams. So the children are matched onto the team for a 2-year program, and they're embedded into the full culture of the team. They can attend practices, games. They have a draft day that sort of initiates the beginning of the relationship, where they sign a national letter of intent with the team. It's a really special day where, everyone comes together to celebrate them and their joining of the team. And then from there, sort of, every single case is different because all the teams are different, and they have an individualized approach as to how they're going to interact with the child and the family. But each one is unique and special in its own way. And it continues for 2 years through our program, but oftentimes way beyond that. It's usually a lifelong relationship that is formed.
Yeah, it's so cool. And in our specific case for this month with Maddy, she is part of the women's lacrosse team with Syracuse University, and her family had so much great things to say about that relationship and just what it's meant to her and to the whole family. So, Shanna, tell us about the process of how families are selected and how they get matched with the team and kind of what that whole relationship looks like.
Yeah. I would start off by saying, to dovetail a little bit, as you can imagine, these children and their families are dealing with such incredible medical trauma and the burden of either receiving a diagnosis that will change their life or having grown up with this forever. And so what Team Impact really does is we create this support system And as we wrap the support around them, the whole goal is to really help them with social and emotional development, because that's really halted as a result of their medical trauma. And so the process really begins oftentimes with our relationship with the medical community, with pediatric hospitals across the country, with camps that focus on these disease areas, and also with, disease communities themselves online who have heard about us. So it's either referred by a doctor or a social worker or a child life specialist who sees these kiddos that are struggling socially and emotionally, or parents that are online and have heard of other kids that have gone through Team Impact. So they apply to our program, which is really a therapeutic program in a non-therapeutic setting. And what ends up happening as they come through our doors is we have this incredible team of matchup specialists who really look at the child and their family and the moment that they're at in their diagnosis and their medical journey. And first and foremost, they look for a team that's geographically close to them, because our kids are hopefully with their teammates on average once a week for a 2-year period and beyond. And so we want to make sure they can get to campus and that their teammates can get to them. So we look at finding them a team that's close to them and a team that really is going to help them reach these goals. And we take so many things into consideration around what the right team is. If there are sensory issues, maybe an indoor sport isn't the best, or if they're really working on socialization and getting out there, a large football team might be just what they need. So there's a lot that goes into kind of figuring out what the right team is for the right kid and making sure that the child is at the right moment in their medical journey where they can really benefit from Team Impact.
Yeah.
If they're really young and they haven't started to physically not look like their peers or interact like their peers, maybe a couple of years down the road would be a better time for them. Or maybe this is the perfect moment to, get them through their cancer treatment and reacclimate them back into life through the skills that they'll learn through Team Impact. And so once we find the team and once we make the match, that's kind of where a lot of the work is done up front so that we can put them in a position to really flourish organically. And that's where their social worker comes into play and really develops a game plan that works for these kids and their families and our student athletes. And we train our student athletes not only on the diagnosis, but on Team Impact and really how to help this child and their family achieve these goals and be a support system. And, for our college athletes, we train them, like, you may not be able to make them happy on a really, really hard day, but you may be able to be the person that's there when they're going through the really hard day. And so our job is to equip everyone with the tools so that then the relationship can flourish organically and we can be there to intervene when major moments happen or, a child comes out of remission and relapses or whatever the case may be. And then they go through this process over 2 years where they're building this amazing relationship that is enabling them to really work on these social and emotional skills and distress points that have been, such a halted barrier as a result of their medical trauma and the diagnosis that they're going through.
Yeah, I think that's one of the coolest elements of your approach is, because if you're just looking at it from the outside and you just kind of get a glimpse of what you're doing and you just kind of saw some of the visuals of, a kid getting a signing day and kind of being, quote, part of the team, there might be a temptation to think that it's just a feel-good moment or kind of a morale booster for the family, but you guys go so much deeper than that. You talked about the social worker and kind of how you have an approach with your staffing and kind of even training for the team. And so it's kind of like a therapeutic but very intentional approach, and I think that's really cool. Give us an idea of like the tangible everyday relationship, what that looks like between a child and a team member, like one of the college kids on the team. How might they develop a relationship over time? What does that look like?
Yeah. So, like I said, our social workers, help them develop goals and game plans around like how they're going to achieve the goal. And then the way in which they execute it and kind of the day-to-day, what it looks like is embedding each of these stakeholders, each of these target populations, which are our student athletes and coaches, our parents, our kids, their siblings, really into their everyday life. So going to practice, being there for game day, being part of the team as they do warm-ups. If the child is going through treatment or they're back in the hospital, it's the team identifying, okay, who can be there on Thursday, who can be there on Friday, who's going to sit with them during their infusion. Trick-or-treating on Halloween, being there for their birthday parties. It's really and then also virtually, I mean, so much of what we're able to accomplish is over FaceTime, over, TikTok, sending messages, Snapchat, really this is an in-person and virtual opportunity. And then, what we find is most interesting is that they then integrate the therapy into this day-to-day thing. So really quick example, if it's helpful to understand,
Sure.
We have a child who recently was struggling significantly with social interaction, couldn't look another person in the eye, really stayed directly behind mom and dad at all times, and also was really struggling to do their therapy, their physical therapy and occupational therapy, and regain strength in their limbs. And so our case manager, it was also a lacrosse team, worked closely with the team and essentially said, okay, for PT and OT, what we really need to do is have this child be cradling a lacrosse stick at every time that they're on campus with you guys, or when you're visiting them at home or in the hospital. They can feel like they're just one of the guys, and that's what they do, but that's actually the physical and occupational therapy they need to grow strength and really regain their day-to-day activity. And then on game day, we would love for you to have them go out to the middle of the field with your captains, shake the other team and the referee's hands, look them in the eye, and introduce themselves, because that is how we can show them they can find the confidence to regain their social interaction and confidence. And so that's exactly what they did. Now this child goes out for every game in the middle of the field and not only shakes the hand, but is like, all right, you don't even know who you're up against. 3 months later, they're really the one that's hyping everyone up before the game, and they can cradle that lacrosse stick for almost an hour when they couldn't even lift anything before. So, we integrate into day-to-day, especially so that our student athletes who are so busy and they have so much going on get to be these partners during a time frame that works for them. And then we see it just flourish from there.
Yeah. Really cool. That's awesome. What's the most common feedback that you get from parents as far as they talk about the impact that comes with the kiddos about being part of a team?
I think that a lot of the feedback that we're getting from parents and families is that Team Impact not only allows their child to have, another activity and another way for them to be involved and sort of have something that's a little bit more normalizing in their life, but also the entire family, so siblings included. So it's really great that, of course, the child who's dealing with illness and trauma is, of course, the focus of this relationship, but a lot of times it really organically spreads to any siblings that might be included or involved, or the parents, and everyone's included. I've heard from a family that I'm close with, they were shocked by this. They have a daughter who's a member of Team Impact, and then they also have 2 sons. And they said a lot of times, things that we're doing with our daughter, our sons are not included. They're left out of a lot. They, don't come to appointments with us. They don't come to events, things like that. But Team Impact has included the entire family in team dinners, in games, in practices. When the child FaceTimes with the team, her siblings are in the background saying hello as well. They're making signs. So it's really something that the entire family can be involved with, which I think is great, because I think a lot of times, especially with a sick child, the focus can sometimes be solely on them, understandably, but it's nice that Team Impact allows the entire family to be part of the experience.
Yeah, and not only are they oftentimes solely about the child, but it's environment that's solely about what the child can't do or what the child is facing. It's medical driven. It's not experience driven like what this is. And I think what's cool about the work that you're doing is what's common is people talking about a third space in families where they have work or school, and then they have home, and then they're always kind of looking for a third place where they all belong. And for the families that you guys are working with and that we're working with, it's much harder for them to find that third space where everybody kind of belongs. And it sounds like the relationship that you guys develop with them, with these families, kind of creates that safe third space where everybody belongs and can have a good time, but also be very strategic in growth. Would you say that's true?
Absolutely. I mean, I think you just hit it right on the head, which is, the typical activities or community that families and children who are healthy and not battling so many of these issues have access to, from sports and extracurriculars to churches to those third spaces for them, are places that build them up. And oftentimes our children, not only do they not have access to them, those places aren't set up to fill those emotional and social needs for them, and so can be detrimental to their growth. And so that's, our goal is exactly what you just said, is to create that space that's not only accessible to them, but that provides intentional ways for social and emotional growth, for combating social isolation, for togetherness in a really therapeutic and intentional way.
Yeah. A place where they can all thrive together.
Yeah. And then interestingly, I'm sure, when they started Team Impact, this was all about these children and about their families. And that forever will be our why. But, we may get into it more later, but what's been profound is, the role that these children and their families have played on transforming a generation of young people and our student athletes. It's unbelievable to see the role that this child plays in a huddle, or that this family plays with these young people as they're developing into the people that they want to become right before they leave college. They're watching these young kids who are battling for their life. And even on a tough day, even on a hard moment, that they're there and they're cheering. Or, the day after surgery, they're getting on a plane to surprise their team at their championship game because they have to be there. What we've seen is 50,000 young college athletes who all of a sudden are saying, like, I'm going out into the world. I want to be a leader. I want to be successful. But by the way, empathy and inclusion and civic mindedness and being part of my community are actually at the top of my leadership quality list because of what I just experienced with Team Impact. And so, we say it's a win-win-win, but we have a real opportunity right now, not only to impact these children and families' lives, but they are changing the lives of our next generation of leadership.
Right. Yeah, because then they go and they take that experience into their careers and into any nonprofit experience that they may have in the future, or starting a business. All of those things are started, and they enter those environments with that experience that has shaped them. And so the elements of creating an inclusive environment, an environment that's equitable for all people, is just kind of they can't help but be shaped by that. And so you said 50,000. Is that how many athletes have been involved on the program side with Team Impact since it started?
Yeah.
That is amazing.
50,000 college athletes thus far. And we've worked with over 2,000 children and 2,000 families. So, over the last 8 years, we've grown significantly. And, the growth is, we're really at that rocket ship moment where our national board and our staff, we've invested in infrastructure to allow us to be on the ground in regions all over the country right now, have access to so many more kids. And, this year we'll bring in about 400 new kids and multiply that on average by 25 athletes per child and family. But by 2024, you're looking at potentially 30,000 college athletes every single year. being
Wow.
part of this program, and thousands of children. So
That is amazing. And I'm sure, having played a role in that, that has to be impactful for both of you personally. I'm wondering if you could share your personal background and how you became involved with Team Impact, and then, maybe how you've been changed or found fulfillment in your role.
Yeah, for me, I've known about Team Impact for a while now. We host a really wonderful gala in April every year in Boston. It attracts 1,400 people, athletes, celebrities, just people families, children. It's really centered solely on the families and their stories, and the children and their stories, and the student athletes and their stories. So I've been attending that for years, and really was just drawn to what this program does, because there's really not a lot out there like it. And it was just truly magical to see these kids and these parents get up and talk about their experience. And I was just so touched by it. And so I've been following Team Impact for a while. And then I actually had a family friend who I ran the marathon for their daughter in 2017 for Boston Children's Hospital. They pair you with a patient partner. And I got matched with this amazing young woman named Kayla. And I really, after I got to know them, for a while, I really urged them to get their daughter involved in this program, because she was, an avid field hockey player, loved the sport, but was just not necessarily getting the benefits from her high school, her middle school and high school team that she should be. So they finally did sign her up for Team Impact after a little bit of resistance, just because she had, a lot going on, given, her condition and doctor's appointments and things like that. But it truly changed her life and their family's life from the moment that she was matched with the field hockey team that she was matched with. So I was able to really witness it firsthand. So sort of after that moment, I realized that what I was doing currently was just not going to fulfill me long term, and I needed to be a part of an organization that was changing lives the way that it was, because I was watching it happen in front of my eyes, and I just wanted to aid in that and help that continue. So I've been at Team Impact since August, and it truly has been life-changing for me as well. Being able to hear these stories daily and to be a part of what this organization and group of people is creating is, I really couldn't ask for more.
That's awesome. Shanna, what about you? What's your experience been?
Yeah, so my entire career has been in fundraising. I started in fundraising when I graduated from college, and kind of quickly made my way to Boston Children's Hospital and spent quite some time there doing fundraising and major gift work. And so pediatric healthcare has always been incredibly important to me, and been kind of at the core of my fundraising passion. And of course, I'm also a huge sports fan, but also I started another nonprofit in the music industry about 11 years ago, where we were able to bring kind of top musical artists to hospitals to spend time in relationship-driven experiences with kids while they were on tour. And so when Team Impact came to me and to our CEO, Seth, it was kind of the culmination of everything we had done and cared about: pediatric healthcare fundraising, relationship-driven opportunities to bring inspiration and happiness to kids and families battling tough times. And kind of my other side of my brain and my background is on building teams and building fundraising programs. And so Team Impact was at this incredible moment 3 years ago when we came, where they had this unbelievable proof of concept in all of these children who had benefited from it, but recognized that they needed to, make some shifts and take some leaps in order to become truly a national organization that could impact as many people as they wanted to.
Yeah.
And so it was just that incredible opportunity to come in at a time where we were prepared to really create this clinical program, to put infrastructure on the ground around the country and impact a population of young people and leaders who I was so passionate about working for and with. So it has been, we always say on our team, it's not a job, it's, a life commitment and a lifelong passion and a labor of love. And that's truly, what it is for us. So we're the lucky ones who work at Team Impact, that we have the privilege and honor to get to throw ourselves into this every single day.
Yeah. And what's cool too is that you get to be kind of the ambassadors that try to bring others along too, whether it's from a corporate standpoint or from a fundraising, event planning, or whatever those different things are, is you get to help tell the story of how what you're doing is changing the lives of these families, and then allow the people that are on the other side of that, the donors, to really get to own a lot of that outcome, to be able to go back to them and say, look at what you did, look what your support did, and in making a difference for these families. And I think that's awesome.
Each month at Go Shout Love, we do amazing things for families with kids on rare medical journeys. We do this through the sale of creative apparel inspired by that kid. This month, we are featuring Maddy, a spunky girl from Liverpool, New York. The amazingly made t-shirt design reminds us that every life is beautiful. Visit our website at GoShout.love to support Maddy through the purchase of a t-shirt, hoodie, tumbler, hat, or other items. Every item sold in March will be used to help replace the deck in their backyard with a patio and ramp that is easy for Maddy to navigate. You can also start a subscription and Shout Love every month and repeat that process. Use the discount code PODCAST at checkout and you will get $5 off your first month's order. And now, back to our conversation with Team Impact.
Ali, I want to go back real quick. You mentioned an example that kind of, I think her name was Kayla. Is that right? That you ran for? And you mentioned some of the resistance that her family gave, as far as it took a little bit of time, it sounds like, to try to get her on board with Team Impact. And you touched on this a little bit, but I wonder if you could go back and talk a little bit about specifically maybe what some of those hesitations were, because I'm sure they're probably pretty common for families in a similar position. And then what you were able to do to kind of help lead them along in doing something that brought, such a great outcome and opportunity for the family, but maybe took a little bit of urging or convincing, if you will.
Yeah, no, and I think for people who are new to the program and not familiar with it through word of mouth and are just hearing about it for the first time, it can be a little bit overwhelming just to add another thing to your plate, especially, like I said, when you're dealing with a child who is dealing with illness and doctor's appointments and, missing school and things of that nature. So to add something else on can seem, overwhelming. And I think that that's what the family was concerned with, because, they hadn't heard about Team Impact and they weren't really sure about exactly what the commitment was and what it entailed and what it was going to entail for their family. Luckily, I know, as Shanna was saying before, when a child is matched with a team, a lot goes into that matchmaking process. So location is one of those things. So she was able to get matched with a team that was 5 minutes from her house. So, being able to get to practice and games was luckily, pretty easy for them. And I think, again, all of these relationships are so unique and individualized that there may be one instance where a child, attends practice every single day and attends every single game and every team dinner. There are other circumstances where, a child can maybe only get to campus once a month, or a lot of the interaction, like Shanna had said, is done virtually on FaceTime, texting, and those are all okay. There's no cookie cutter, relationship. They're all different and they're all unique. And I think that anyone who's curious about the program should just give it a chance and inquire and ask these questions if these are questions or concerns that they may have. But then also realize that there's, from our standpoint, of course, we want, we come up with an individualized plan and approach, but we know that families and children are dealing with certain circumstances, and it's going to be different for everyone. So there's no pressure and there's no, commitment to be at every single event that occurs. And I think the teams and the coaches do a great job of adapting and realizing, what the child can can handle, a certain week, and things are always changing.
Sure.
I would also just say to that, I think one of the amazing things about what Allie was just saying is that, the deeper we get into this clinical model and the more measurement and evaluation we've done with our student athletes, with our kids, with our parents and families, we're really learning as an organization and as a clinical team. I'm going to use this. I'm air quoting right now around dosage, right? We're really learning more about, okay, because we have this clinical delivery, if a child is combating this, what does it take to reach that goal? If they're dealing with this, what does it take to reach that goal? Can that be done virtually? Is that something that needs to happen in person? So this idea of, we're creating these plans so that we can scale and have a model that we can, there's fidelity to that model,
Sure.
right? Every child that comes into our program in Boston, California, Hawaii, or Denver gets the same level of experience. But because of our clinical delivery, what might take one child 3 times a week could take another child 18 months only going monthly. And so, it's really up to the clinical team working with the parent on what is realistic and how we can deliver it. So as Allie said, it's low pressure. It's just more, we're there to help them identify what they can do, how it fits into their life, and what the dosage really takes for all of these things that they're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, that's really, I hadn't even thought about that element of it from almost like from a research standpoint and kind of knowing it from a predictable model for the future of how many teams you need and how much involvement you need from those different teams for different needs. Do you have certain dosage, for lack of better terms, that you're measuring with the teams as far as growth on the athletic side of things, or is that mostly for the kids and families?
Oh yeah, we just actually hired a national director of student athlete development, who comes to us from Northeastern Center for Sport and Society, and her background is in curriculum and training. Using the power of sport to bring goodness to our world. And she's trained folks from MLB around breaking down barriers and leadership. And, she's really excellent. And part of what she's doing is working with our clinical team to understand what are our goals around personal development and leadership development for our student athletes. How does that interface with our goals for our children? And then how do we develop the right training and curriculum and dosage for our student athletes at, the different engagement levels so that we can provide them not only the training to be able to properly partner with these kids and build the relationship to reach their goals, but what does it look like for them coming out of this program and at what level? So we have student athlete fellows who are, selected through a very kind of very selective process to be our ambassadors on campus, and they come in for intensive training. And they're a group that works with the athletic departments in the local community, and there are currently 40 of them. And then we have our team leaders who work a little bit more closely with the families and setting the game plans of their case managers. But now we have the opportunity to identify what kind of, again, dosage the broad student athlete population needs to achieve their leadership and personal development goals as part of Team Impact. And so we're going to see through all of the surveying we're doing and the curriculum development we're doing for our student athletes, not only hopefully a richer and more positive and therapeutic experience for these kids as we go forward, but just, a much better understanding of what it will take our student athletes to go through this program and really achieve the type of success and outcomes that, we're looking for them to achieve. So it's this amazing moment where we're using research and surveying and strategic partnerships to deepen our intervention for every population we're working with so that they can have the most, amazing impact while being an efficient and smart organization.
Yeah, so it sounds like you're doing major work on both ends of that for the families and then also for the student athletes, and no doubt helping shape the future, like we mentioned before, for whatever lies ahead for those student athletes. And that's incredible work. If I'm a parent that's listening and maybe I have a child that's on a rare medical journey and I'm trying to figure out if this is something I want to learn more about, first, a question that would come to mind may be, what kind of parameters are there for the program around age and or diagnosis as far as determining whether a kid is a good match or not?
So we our age range is from ages 5 to 16 years old, and currently we are working with children that have a serious or chronic illness. But I think, as we mentioned earlier, each case is looked at by our clinical team, and so every single child that applies to the program, they're looked at, and their child's illness is looked at, and everyone is considered. So I would say, if there's a parent who is wondering if their child is right for this program, I would just say to reach out and to ask questions, and to not, again, the children that we are working with have a serious or chronic illness, but we're looking at every case as an individualized approach.
And I would just add to that, I think for parents, and they might be able to really relate to this or not if they're listening, where Team Impact makes, no pun intended, impact, where we can really drive outcomes is around social and emotional development. So we're really looking at kids and families with baseline a medical, chronic, or critical diagnosis that are feeling isolated, who are, looking for a sense of belonging, confidence, optimism. We really focus on the psychosocial aspects and elements that come along with such a serious diagnosis, and those are the kids that we see having the highest impact from our program. And so when we look at eligibility, we cross 40 plus diagnoses. From that standpoint, most children with a critical or chronic diagnosis are eligible for our program. But we're looking to make sure that, as a parent, if you're deciding whether or not this is a program for you, I think, thinking about if your child is struggling in any way, in terms of feeling as like they belong, or finding a place, or finding confidence, or working on their social and emotional skills, we can really, really help them, not only as a child, but as an entire family.
Yeah, it's like you guys are addressing the symptoms that come with the other symptoms, or the symptoms that come with the diagnosis, the intangible things. You go to the doctor to deal with the medical elements of that, and then this is kind of a supplemental program that really kind of helps shape the person and really treat the person, the overall health of the child outside of just the medical piece. And I love the clinical approach that you've talked about. It's really important and helpful. Go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, not at all. I think, one of the things we talk about a lot at Team Impact is, sometimes it's fleeting, but we all know how awful the feeling of loneliness is and isolation. I don't know societally if we've fully come to understand that loneliness and isolation, with that, which leads to no sense of belonging, is truly detrimental for quality of life. When you look at our hierarchy of needs as humans, we cannot exist without a sense of belonging and connectivity. And so one of our goals here is, for the world to know just how deeply imperative it is that, in addition to the medical care, that these children's mental health and their social and emotional well-being is intact, and that we're helping drive those outcomes. Because not only does it help with medical compliance and all of those things, but it is detrimental to the health and quality of life of any human being, for these things to be intact and thriving. And so, we are there to help them, but we're also there to help the world understand that isolation and loneliness is not just a sad thing, but it's truly a critical element to all of us as humans thriving and finding quality of life.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so for listeners who might kind of fall into that category and feel like, oh man, this is definitely something for my family. There's an easy apply to program tab on your website, teamimpact.org, where families can go. Is that the best place for them to get more information and start that conversation?
Yes, that would be the best place to go. And, if families are looking to experience some more content, you can, check out the Instagram page, which is Go Team Impact, and also our Facebook page where we're sharing things daily, and, we're going live and we have Instagram stories that are showcasing draft days and certain children and families. And so that's a great place to go as well to check out some more content.
Awesome. And if someone is listening that has connections with a collegiate program, I'm assuming you're always looking for additional universities and athletic programs to connect with, right?
Yeah, and I would say too, I think as Shanna just talked about, in terms of families and children getting involved, I think just as important is the teams and the student athletes getting involved as well. And I think, especially now, what's so amazing about these student athletes being a part of Team Impact is it's teaching them that the games and the wins and the losses are not always the most important. It's the camaraderie of the team and the ability to persevere in challenging situations. So I think, it's important for the teams as well to look at our program and realize that it's beneficial for them as well. So, there's a easy access spot on our website as well for teams to apply.
Awesome. Well, anything else that our listeners should know or that you'd like to leave with them before we wrap up?
I think it's just, as Allie said many times, we're so proud of our kids. We're so proud of our families and our student athletes. They are these incredible ambassadors around how social connection can truly change the world, and how leadership that's looked through the lens of empathy and inclusion can make the world a better place. And, I don't know when this will air, but we're at a very, very important moment where social isolation and connectivity in this country is going to be, at an all-time loss, right? We're all sitting in our homes right now. And I think that's what we do at Team Impact. We find ways, no matter what the barrier is, to create strong, smart, amazing ways for humans to connect with one another and find confidence, sense of belonging, and happiness through those moments. So we're here for everyone, not just these kids and student athletes. And we're just grateful to have the chance to talk to you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for taking the time. I'm sure you're both very busy, and we are so thankful for the work that you're doing.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. I hope this episode gave you some uplifting messages or something to take away that was inspiring to you. This, I believe, was our 51st episode, so there are 50 great conversations that are already on our podcast that you can go and listen to, and hopefully remain encouraged by things that are going on through Go Shout Love and organizations like Team Impact. And also, we have more great conversations coming up your way. The next one, I believe, is with Victory Adaptive Collection. So you'll want to stay tuned, and you'll want to keep on listening to the Go Shout Love podcast. Also, you can please rate and review this podcast so that other people might come across it and maybe be blessed as well. Feel free also go to goshout.love and shop around with some soft hoodies, t-shirts, coffee mugs, tumblers, all sorts of great things. It's still possible to shout love while we are all at home right now. You can go to our Facebook page and look up on Instagram all the great things that are going on with Maddy and some previous families as well. And as best you can, please go shout love.